The West Texas sun hung low and red on the horizon, painting the dust the color of dried blood. Kira Blackwood pressed her back against the concrete wall of the abandoned bunker, her M40A6 rifle still warm against her shoulder. 6 military working dogs formed a protective semicircle around her, their bodies tense, their eyes fixed on the wasteland beyond. 50 yards out, Vaughn Mercer stood beside a black Suburban, a rifle in his hands and murder in his eyes. The air tasted like cordite and defeat. Kira Blackwood, his voice carried across the emptiness, amplified by the evening stillness. Your grandfather sends his regards, I assume. Kira's jaw tightened. Her finger rested beside the trigger guard, not on it. Not yet. Behind her, somewhere in the bunker's depths, she could hear the old man breathing. 72 years old and still steady as granite even now. My grandfather says you still owe him a life, she called back. Mercer laughed. It was a sound like breaking glass. Thatcher Dunham owes me a life, my father's life. The largest of the 6 dogs, a German shepherd named Sergeant, pressed against Kira's leg. His weight was solid and reassuring. Real. She could feel his heartbeat through the tactical vest he wore. Then come and collect, Kira said quietly. Mercer raised his rifle. The screen went dark. White text appeared against the blackness, 84 hours earlier. April 17, 1996, West Texas, 14 miles from the Mexico border. The helicopter's rotors chopped the air in steady rhythm. Thatcher Hawk Dunham crouched in the doorway of the Bell 206, his MP-5 submachine gun tracking the warehouse below. 44 years old, 20 years with the DEA, and he'd never seen a situation this compromised. 8 children, that's what the intel said. 8 kids ages 6 to 14 locked in a shipping container, while Silas Mercer and his crew moved military-grade weapons across the border. The kind of weapons that ended up in cartel hands. The kind that killed Border Patrol agents and federal officers. The kind that killed good men. 2 minutes, the pilot said through the headset. His name was Declan Blackwood, 32 years old, Border Patrol Aviation Unit. He had a 6-month-old daughter named Kira back home in El Paso. Declan wouldn't shut up about her. Showed pictures every chance he got. Daddy's little girl, Declan would say, grinning. Now Declan's voice was all business, professional. The grin was gone. Below them, the warehouse sprawled across the desert like a wound. Corrugated metal and concrete sitting in the middle of nowhere. 3 vehicles parked outside. Armed men moved between them, weapons catching the late afternoon sun. I count 9 hostiles, Thatcher said. Maybe more inside. Your call, Hawk. Thatcher studied the layout. The shipping container sat near the eastern wall, doors closed. Intel said that's where the kids were. Intel also said Silas Mercer was inside the main building, coordinating the transfer of 50 crates of M4 rifles stolen from a National Guard armory in Oklahoma. 50 crates, 200 weapons, enough firepower to arm a small army. Set us down 100 yards out, Thatcher said. Eastern approach. I'll go in on foot. Ooh, Declan's voice carried doubt. Alone against 9 guys. I've done worse. Not in my bird, you haven't. The helicopter began its descent. The rotors kicked up plumes of dust that rolled across the desert like smoke. Thatcher checked his rifle, his sidearm, his spare magazines. Everything in its place. Everything ready. The skids touched dirt. 30 minutes, Thatcher said, jumping down. If I'm not back in 30, get out of here. And leave you, and call for backup. Don't be a hero, Blackwood. Declan's face was tight behind the cockpit glass. Don't get killed, Dunham. Thatcher ran. The warehouse grew larger with each step. The sun pressed down like a hammer. His boots crunched on gravel and sage. Somewhere in the distance, a hawk screamed. He'd been called Hawk since his first year in the DEA after he'd spotted a target from 300 yards out that everyone else had missed. Eyes like a hawk, they'd said. Right now, those eyes were fixed on the shipping container. He reached the eastern wall and pressed against it, feeling the metal warm through his shirt. Inside, he could hear voices. Spanish. Arguing about money. He moved along the wall, slow and silent, until he reached a service door. Unlocked. Sloppy. The interior was dim and hot, filled with wooden crates stacked 12 feet high. The M4s. Thatcher moved between them like a ghost, his MP5 raised, his breathing controlled. The voices grew louder. He rounded a corner and saw them. 4 men standing around a table covered with paperwork and banded stacks of cash. And at the head of the table, Silas Mercer himself. 45 years old, former Army Ranger, turned arms dealer. The DEA had been hunting him for 6 years. None of them saw Thatcher until he spoke. Federal agent, on the ground, now. They went for their weapons. Thatcher fired first. 3 round burst center mass on the nearest target. The man went down. The others scattered, Gunfire erupted, deafening in the enclosed space. Bullets punched through wooden crates, sending splinters flying. Thatcher dove behind a stack of boxes as a return fire stitched the air where he'd been standing. This was the part they didn't show in the movies, the part where everything went to hell and you just tried to stay alive. He rolled left, came up firing. Caught another target in the shoulder, spinning him around. The man's rifle clattered to the concrete floor. 2 down, 3 to go. Silas Mercer was shouting orders, moving toward the back of the warehouse, toward the container, toward the kids. Thatcher's radio crackled. Hawk, I'm hearing gunfire. You need extract? Negative, stay put. Hawk, stay put, Blackwood. Thatcher pushed forward. Another burst of fire. Another target down. That left Mercer and 1 bodyguard. He could hear them now running. A metal door screeched open. The container. No, no, no. Thatcher sprinted. Rounded the corner in time to see Mercer yanking open the container doors. Inside, huddled in the darkness, 8 children stared out with wide, terrified eyes. The youngest couldn't have been more than 6. Mercer grabbed the nearest child, a girl, pulling her in front of him like a shield. His pistol pressed against her temple. Back off, Mercer screamed. Back off or I paint the walls with her. Thatcher stopped. His rifle was aimed, but he didn't have a shot. Not with the girl in the way. Let her go, Silas. You killed my men. You kidnapped children. The standoff stretched. Seconds felt like hours. Thatcher's finger rested on the trigger, waiting for an opening. Any opening. The girl was crying, silent tears running down her dirt-streaked face. Then he saw it. A flicker of movement. Mercer's grip shifting just slightly. His pistol moving a fraction of an inch away from the girl's head. Thatcher fired. The bullet caught Mercer in the throat. He dropped, gurgling, his pistol clattering across the concrete. The girl screamed and ran toward the other children. The bodyguard raised his weapon. Thatcher put 2 rounds through his chest. Silence. Thatcher lowered his rifle, breathing hard. The children were screaming now, all of them, the sound echoing off the metal walls. He moved to them slowly, hands raised. It's okay, he said in Spanish. You're safe now, you're safe. He keyed his radio. Blackwood, I need immediate extract. 8 children, medical attention required. Hostiles neutralized. Copy that, inbound. Thatcher helped the children out of the container one by one. The youngest boy clung to his leg, wouldn't let go. A girl, maybe 12, kept looking at Mercer's body, her face blank. The helicopter's rotors grew louder. Declan set down 20 yards from the warehouse entrance, the rotor wash kicking up a storm of dust. Thatcher led the children toward it. That's when he saw the boy. 14 years old, maybe 15, hiding in the shadows near one of the parked vehicles. Dark hair, dark eyes, watching everything. In his hands, a pair of binoculars. Their eyes met. The boy turned and ran, disappearing into the desert scrub. Thatcher hesitated. Should he chase? Should he hawk? We gotta move the children. He had 8 children and a helicopter that could barely carry them all. One teenager in the desert would have to wait. He loaded the kids into the Bell, 206 packing them in tight. Declan was right. This was going to be close. Very close. This is too much weight, Declan said. His face was pale. Hawk, we're over max gross by at least 200 pounds. Can you fly it? I can try. Then try. Thatcher climbed in last. The helicopter's engine strained, the rotors clawing for purchase in the hot desert air. They lifted slowly, painfully. Slowly. 10 feet. 20. 30. The engine coughed. Come on, baby, Declan whispered. Come on. 50 feet. 75. They were going to make it. They were actually going to. The engine died. Not sputtered, not failed, died. Like someone had cut the fuel line with scissors. They fell. 400 feet straight down. The desert rushed up like a fist. Thatcher grabbed the nearest child, curled his body around her. Declan fought the controls, fighting for every second of glide time. The impact was thunder and lightning and the end of the world. Metal screamed, glass shattered. The children screamed louder. Thatcher felt something in his chest crack, felt pain blossom like fire. But he held on, held the child in his arms until everything stopped moving. Silence, ringing in his ears, dust in the air, the smell of aviation fuel. Declan, his voice was a croak. Declan. He found the pilot slumped over the controls, blood running from a gash on his forehead. Thatcher checked for a pulse. There. Weak, but there. Stay with me, Blackwood. Stay with me. But Declan's eyes were rolling back. His breathing was shallow, labored. Thatcher looked around wildly. The children. Count the children. 6, 7, 8. All breathing, all alive. He grabbed Declan's rifle, the M24 that Declan kept mounted beside his seat. It was an old weapon, Korean War vintage, that Declan's father had carried. The wood stock was scratched and worn. As Thatcher pulled it free, Declan's hand grabbed his wrist. "Take it," Declan whispered, blood on his lips. "For Kira. Tell her Daddy did his job. You're going to tell her yourself. Thatcher," using his first name now, promise me you'll watch over her. You're not dying today." But Declan's grip was already loosening. His eyes were fixed on something far away, something Thatcher couldn't see. His last breath came out like a sigh. Daddy's little girl. Thatcher sat there holding the dead man's rifle, listening to the children cry. On the stock near the trigger guard, he saw dark stains. Blood. Some of it Declan's. Some of it his own from his broken ribs. In the distance, sirens began to wail. Backup, finally. He looked down at Declan Blackwood's face. 32 years old. Dead because they'd been overweight. Dead because Thatcher had insisted on taking all 8 children at once. Dead because Thatcher had lived. That was the day Thatcher Hawk Dunham learned what debt really meant. Present-day border outpost Raven, Texas. The dog tags clinked softly as Kira Blackwood adjusted her plate carrier. 28 years old, 5'6", 140 pounds of muscle and determination. She'd inherited her father's dark hair and her mother's green eyes. She'd never met Declan Blackwood. He died when she was 6 months old, but she wore his tags every day. The West Texas heat pressed down like a physical weight. 112 degrees in the shade, except there was no shade at border outpost Raven. Just 3 buildings, a helipad, and enough chain-link fence to cage the sun. Kira stood in the observation tower, her M40A6 rifle resting on its bipod, scanning the horizon through the scope. 5 years as a Marine Scout sniper. 3 years at this posting. She knew every rock, every gully, every piece of terrain within 2,000 yards. Right now, that terrain was crawling with activity. 47 Marines and Border Patrol agents moved through the compound below, preparing for something they all hoped wouldn't come. Preparing to leave. "Contact," a voice crackled through her radio. "Main gate, civilian vehicle." Kira swung her scope toward the entrance. A white GMC Sierra pulling a cargo trailer. Driver looked nervous. Passenger looked worse. "Run the plates," she said. "Already did. Registered to a ranch in Marfa. Owner checks out. Search the vehicle." Below, 2 Border Patrol agents approached the truck. Standard procedure. They'd search hundreds of vehicles this month. Most were clean, some weren't. This one wasn't. Kira watched through her scope as one of the agents opened the trailer. Watched his body language change. Watched him key his radio. "Ma'am, you need to see this." By the time Kira reached the gate, they'd unloaded 3 crates from the trailer. Inside each crate, packaged in foam, were military-grade weapons. M4 carbines, 50 per crate, 150 rifles total. The K9 unit was already on scene. 7 military working dogs, each one trained to detect explosives, drugs, and weapons. The largest, a German shepherd named Sergeant, sat at attention beside the crates, his tail wagging once. Good boy. The handler was a kid named Ronan Cade. 24 years old, freckles, red hair, looked like he should be in college instead of handling combat dogs. But Kira had seen him work. The dogs trusted him. That was enough. "Clean hit," Ronan said. His voice had a slight drawl, West Texas, born and raised. Sergeant alerted first. The others confirmed. Kira studied the weapons. Serial numbers had been filed off, but poorly. These were recent acquisitions. Professional work would have removed the numbers completely. "Where'd these come from?" she asked the driver. The driver was sweating, his hands shaking. "I don't know, I swear. Guy paid me $500 to haul them to Presidio. Said it was farm equipment." "You didn't look inside?" "I needed the money." Kira believed him. He had the look of a man who'd made a mistake and knew it. She turned to the senior agent, a grizzled veteran named McCrae. "Call it in. DEA, ATF, whoever handles weapons trafficking now." McCrae nodded. "This is Big Blackwood, real big. These serials match a theft from Fort Hood last month. Someone's moving military hardware across the border. Someone with connections. Someone with money." The radio on Kira's belt squawked. "All personnel, conference room 15 minutes. Mandatory attendance." She looked at the weapons, at the dogs, at the desert beyond the fence. Something was wrong. She could feel it in her bones, the way sailors feel storms coming before the sky changes. The conference room was standing room only. Commander Sterling stood at the front, his uniform crisp despite the heat. 52 years old, career military, the kind of officer who measured his worth in regulations, followed. "Listen up," Sterling said. His voice cut through the murmur of conversation. Intel has confirmed that the weapons seized this morning belong to the Mercer Syndicate. The room went quiet. Everyone knew the name. Vaughn Mercer, 42 years old, son of Silas Mercer. Arms dealer, smuggler, and the kind of criminal who made the cartels look amateur. He'd been operating along the border for 15 years, always one step ahead of the law. Mercer knows we have his weapons, Sterling continued. Intel suggests he's mobilizing resources for a potential assault on this facility. When someone asked, unknown, could be hours, could be days, but I'm not taking chances. Sterling's eyes swept the room. We're evacuating. Full personnel extract in 6 hours. 3 Blackhawks inbound from Fort Bliss. Priority Alpha gear only. Kira's hand went up. What about the K9 unit? Sterling's expression didn't change. The working dogs are classified as equipment, not personnel. They stay. The room erupted. Voices raised in protest. Ronan Cade was on his feet, his face red. Sir, those dogs have saved lives. Sergeant alone has 43 confirmed detections. Atlas stopped a breach last month that would have killed 4 Marines. I'm aware of their service record specialist. Then you know we can't leave them. Sterling's voice went cold. This isn't a debate. We have 3 helicopters, 47 personnel, full combat loads plus essential equipment. The weight calculations are tight, very tight. The dogs stay. That's final. Kira stood. Commander with respect. Captain Blackwood. Sterling's eyes locked on hers. There was something in that gaze, not cruelty, certainty. Your father died because a helicopter was overloaded. Declan Blackwood and 8 children. The math said they couldn't make it. He tried anyway. The helicopter fell out of the skepa. The words hit like a physical blow. Kira felt the room's eyes on her, felt the weight of her father's eyes against her chest. I will not, Sterling continued, repeat that mistake. I will not overload 3 helicopters and risk 47 lives for 7 dogs. The mission parameters are clear. The dogs stay. He paused. I'm sorry, Captain. I know what they mean to you, but I'm responsible for every life on this base. I won't gamble with those lives. The meeting ended. Personnel scattered, moving to pack gear and prepare for extraction. Kira stood in the hallway, her back against the wall, breathing slowly. Ronan found her there. Captain, we can't leave them. We can't. I know. Then what do we do? Kira didn't answer. She was thinking about her father, about 8 children and a helicopter that couldn't carry them all, about choices that echoed across decades. Her quarters were sparse, a cot, a footlocker, a small desk. On the desk sat a wooden box, 12 inches by 8, sealed with a simple latch. She'd carried it for 28 years, never opened it. Her mother had given it to her on her 18th birthday. This is from your father, she'd said. He left it for you. Asked that you open it when you needed to hear from him most. Kira had almost opened it a dozen times, the day she graduated from the Marine Corps Scout Sniper School, the day she made captain, the day her mother died of cancer, leaving Kira truly alone in the world. But something had always stopped her. Because once you open a box like that, you can't close it again. Once you hear what the dead have to say, you have to live with it. Now looking at the box, she knew why she'd waited, because she'd been waiting for this moment. She opened the latch. Inside, resting on faded blue velvet, were 3 things. A photograph of Declan Blackwood holding a baby girl, his smile wide and genuine. A pair of aviator sunglasses, the lenses scratched from use. And a letter. The paper was yellowed with age, the creases worn soft from being folded and unfolded many times before being sealed away. The handwriting was neat, precise, military style. Kira, if you're reading this, it means I didn't make it home. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I'm so sorry. I don't know how old you are now, 18, 21 older. But I know you're strong. You're a Blackwood. We don't break easy. I need to tell you something about the day I die. They'll tell you it was an accident, a mechanical failure, an unfortunate tragedy. That's not the whole truth. The truth is I made a choice. 8 children need saving. The helicopter can't carry them all safely, but I'm taking them anyway. Because leaving them isn't an option. Not for me. Not for any Blackwood. I'm writing this the night before that mission. I don't know if I'll die tomorrow, but if I do, I need you to know I'd make the same choice again. Every time. One day, Kira, you'll face a choice like that. A choice between following orders and doing what's right. Between safety and duty. Between your life and someone else's. When that day comes, remember this. The military will call them equipment. They'll call them assets. They'll say hard decisions have to be made. But you and I know better. They're not equipment. They're brothers, sisters, comrades. The ones who stand beside you when everything goes to hell. So here's my final order to you, Captain Blackwood. Yes, Captain, I know you'll make it. I know you'll be something great. Don't leave them behind. That's an order from your father. And fathers outrank commanders. I love you, sweetheart. I'm proud of you. Make them remember the name Blackwood. Always, Dad. Kira's hands were shaking. She read the letter 3 times, each word burning itself into her memory. Don't leave them behind. That's an order. She folded the letter carefully and placed it in her breast pocket over her heart. Then she picked up the phone. It rang 4 times before he answered. Dunham. The voice was gravel and rust worn down by 72 years of living. Grandpa Hawk, it's Kira. A pause, then, I've been waiting for this call for 28 years. You knew. Your father and I talked the night before that mission. He told me what he was going to write, asked me to make sure you got the box when you needed it most. Kira closed her eyes. They're leaving the dogs, 7 K9s, because of weight restrictions. Because, Dad, stop. Thatcher's voice was sharp. Don't finish that sentence. Your father didn't die because of weight. He died doing what was right. There's a difference. Grandpa, listen to me, Kira. I've carried guilt for 28 years. I know exactly what you're feeling right now. The weight of the choice, the fear of making the wrong one. But here's what I learned. Sometimes there is no wrong choice. Sometimes there's just a choice you can live with. Can you live with leaving 7 dogs behind? Silence on the line, long enough that Kira thought the connection had dropped. Then, no, I can't, and neither can you, so let's not. They'll court-martial me. Maybe, probably. But you'll be able to look at yourself in the mirror. Kira stood, decision crystallizing in her chest like ice. How fast can you get here? I'm already in the truck. Left New Mexico 3 hours ago. I'll be at the coordinates by midnight. What coordinates? The cash point, same one I used in '96. Your father knew about it. Now you do too. He rattled off GPS numbers. Bring the dogs. Bring anyone you trust. We've got 65 miles to cover through hostile territory. Mercer will be waiting. I know, Vaughn Mercer has been waiting 28 years to settle his father's debt. He won't pass up this opportunity. You knew he'd come. I counted on it. See you at midnight, Kira, and bring that letter your father wrote. You're going to need it. The line went dead. Kira stood in her quarters, her father's letter over her heart, and made her choice. She found Ronan Cade in the K9 kennels feeding the dogs. All 7 of them were alert, sensing something wrong. Sergeant came to the fence when he saw Kira, his tail wagging slowly. Ronan. The young man turned. His eyes were red. He'd been crying. I need to know something, Kira said. Why did you volunteer for K9 duty? Ma'am, your file says you grew up in Marfa. Why join the service? Why work with dogs? Ronan wiped his eyes. My father told me a story once. When he was 6 years old, bad men kidnapped him and 7 other kids, put them in a shipping container in the desert. He thought he was going to die. Kira's breath caught. Then a DEA agent came, killed the bad men, saved all 8 kids. And when they were loading up to fly out the helicopter, pilot looked at my dad and smiled, said, "Don't worry, son, we're going home." Tears were running down Ronan's face now. That pilot was your father, Declan Blackwood. He died getting my dad home safe. The helicopter crashed, but all 8 kids survived because your father, because he... Ronan couldn't finish. Kira felt something break open in her chest. Your father was one of the 8. Yes, ma'am. And when I grew up and they asked me what I wanted to do with my life, there was only one answer. I wanted to save lives the way your father saved my dad's. And now you're here, working with dogs that are about to be left behind. Ronan nodded. Feels like a circle, doesn't it? Your dad saved mine. Now I can't save these dogs. Kira stepped closer to the fence. Sergeant pressed his nose against her hand. What if I told you we could save them? Ronan's eyes widened. How come? By finishing what my father started, by not leaving anyone behind. She met his eyes. But it means disobeying orders. It means walking away from the Marines. It probably means prison time. When do we leave? Kira smiled. First time all day. Sunset. Pack light. Bring ammunition. And Ronan, your father survived because mine chose to save him. Let's make sure that choice keeps echoing forward. The sun was a red wound on the horizon when Kira cut the locks on the K9 kennels. 7 dogs emerged one by one. Sergeant first, then Atlas, Chaos, Bones, Shadow Tank, and Reaper. Each one wore a tactical vest. Each one was trained to kill. Ronan had packed supplies. Water for 7 dogs and 2 humans. Food for 3 days. Medical supplies. Ammunition for the M40A6 and the M18 pistol Kira carried. a tactical radio, and bolt cutters. Kira used them on the fence at the eastern perimeter, the part that faced the desert, the part where cameras had blind spots that she'd identified months ago during routine security assessments. The dogs followed without a sound. They'd been trained for silence. "Captain," a voice behind her, she turned to see a young Marine barely 20 staring at her with wide eyes. "What are you doing?" Kira met his gaze. "Following orders, Lance Corporal. My father's orders." "Ma'am, that's—" "Tell Commander Sterling I resigned, effective immediately. Tell him I'm finishing what my father started 28 years ago." She walked through the gap in the fence. 7 dogs followed. Ronan came last, sealing the fence behind them. Behind them, the base was a cluster of lights against the gathering darkness. Ahead, the desert stretched for 65 miles all the way to the abandoned DEA airfield, where Thatcher Dunham waited with supplies and answers. Kira checked her compass, adjusted her pack. The M40A6 was heavy across her back. Her father's letter was light over her heart. Sergeant looked up at her, his brown eyes patient and trusting. "All right, boys," she said quietly. "We're going for a long walk. Stay with me, do exactly what I say, and we all get home. Understand?" 7 pairs of eyes stared back at her. Kira started walking. 7 dogs fell into formation. Sergeant took point, the others spread out in a protective diamond. Behind her, she could hear Ronan's steady breathing. In the distance, she heard the first Blackhawk lifting off, then the second, then the third. The sound of rotors faded into the night. Kira Blackwood walked into the darkness. 7 dogs at her side, her father's tags against her chest, his letter over her heart, his final order burning in her mind. Don't leave them behind. She wouldn't. Not today. Not ever. The desert swallowed them whole, and the stars came out one by one, the same stars that had guided warriors for 10,000 years. The same stars that would guide them home, or guide them to their deaths. Either way, they would face it together. The desert night transformed the world. Where day had been brass and fire night became silver and ice. Temperature dropped 40 degrees in 2 hours. Kira's breath made small clouds in the air as she moved through darkness, her PVS-14 night vision monocular painting everything in shades of green. 7 dogs moved around her like ghosts. No sound except the whisper of paws on sand. No light except the stars overhead, brilliant and cold and utterly indifferent to the small lives moving beneath them. Thatcher Dunham walked 20 yards ahead. 72 years old and still moving like he owned the desert. He'd done this before, many times before, back when Kira's father had still been alive, back when the world had made more sense. Ronan Cade brought up the rear, his footsteps careful, his breathing controlled. Between them, the dogs maintained formation without being told. Sergeant at Kira's left, Atlas and Chaos ranging slightly forward, Shadow and Tank on the flanks, Bones and Reaper watching their 6. 3 hours of walking, 12 miles covered, 53 to go. Kira's shoulders ached from the pack. 60 pounds of water, ammunition, medical supplies, and minimal food. Her M40A6 rifle hung across her chest on a 3-point sling. The M18 pistol rode on her right hip, the Kabar knife on her left. She was carrying enough firepower to start a small war. She hoped it wouldn't come to that. Thatcher's hand came up in a fist. Everyone stopped. The dogs froze mid-step, their training absolute. Kira moved forward in a crouch, coming up beside her grandfather. "There," he whispered, pointing. 300 yards ahead, a cluster of rocks rose from the desert floor like broken teeth. Between them, something gleamed in the starlight. Metal. "The cache?" Kira asked. "That's it. Same spot I buried it in 96. 3 days after your father died. 3 days after I realized I'd be carrying his memory for the rest of my life." They approached slowly, weapons ready. The desert had a way of keeping secrets, but it also had a way of springing surprises. Kira scanned the rocks through her scope. No heat signatures, no movement, nothing but stone and shadow in the wind. The cache was exactly where Thatcher had said it would be. A military-grade storage container, olive drab, buried 3 feet down beneath a flat stone. Kira and Ronan dug while Thatcher kept watch and the dogs formed a perimeter. The container came free with a metallic scrape. Kira broke the seal. Inside, wrapped in waterproof plastic, were supplies that had waited 28 years for this moment. 4-gallon jugs of water, the plastic yellowed but intact. Military MREs in vacuum-sealed packets, probably expired but still edible. Ammunition boxes marked with faded stenciling, .308, Winchester 9mm parabellum. 3 M67 fragmentation grenades, their pins slightly corroded but functional. And they're resting on oiled cloth like a sacred relic, a rifle. The M24, her father's rifle. Kira lifted it carefully. The weapon was older than she was. A Remington 700 action in a Macmillan stock. The wood was scratched and worn, the metal blued and reblued over decades of use. And there on the right side of the stock, near where the shooter's cheek would rest, was a dark stain. Not oil, not dirt, blood. Her father's blood. He was holding that when he died, Thatcher said quietly. Had it braced across his lap when we went down. I pulled him out of the wreckage. The stock was covered in blood. I tried to clean it. But some things don't come clean. Some things you're supposed to carry. Kira ran her fingers over the stain. It was smooth, worn by time and touch. She wondered how many times Thatcher had held this rifle. How many times he'd touched this exact spot, remembering. There's something else, Thatcher said. He reached into the container and pulled out a white envelope. Her name was written on it in her grandfather's block letters. She opened it. The letter was dated 3 months ago. Recent. Kira, if you're reading this, you've made a choice that will either end your career or define it. Probably both. I won't tell you it was the right choice. That's for you to decide when you're old and looking back. But I'll tell you this, doing the right thing is rarely the safe thing. Your father saved 8 children. I've spent 28 years thinking about that choice, wondering what I could have done differently, wishing I could trade places with him. But here's what I finally understand. Declan didn't die because of bad choices or bad luck. He died because he believed saving 8 lives was worth the cost. And those 8 kids, they grew up. They have families now, children of their own. Ronan's father is one of them. That young man exists because your father chose to be a hero instead of a survivor. What you're doing right now, saving those dogs, it's the same choice. The world will call it stupid, reckless, a waste. But the dogs will call it loyalty. And that's the only opinion that matters. I'm coming to help you. Not because I think I can fix what happened 28 years ago, but because I owe Declan Blackwood a debt I can never repay. And because you're his daughter. Blackwoods don't leave their people behind. See you soon. Hawk Kira folded the letter and slipped it into her pocket. Her hands weren't shaking. That surprised her. Thank you, she said. Thatcher shook his head. Don't thank me yet. We've got 50 miles to go and people hunting us. They redistributed the supplies. Kira took extra ammunition for the M24 even though she preferred her M40A6. Something about carrying her father's rifle felt right. Like he was there with her, guiding her hands. The dogs drank deeply from the fresh water. Ronan checked their paws for cuts or abrasions. Everyone was holding up, so far. We should rest, Ronan said. 4 hours till dawn. We can make better time when we can see. Thatcher nodded. Find cover. Set a watch rotation. I'll take first watch. No, Kira said. I'll take first. You need rest more than I do. Thatcher opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. He nodded. That simple gesture meant more to Kira than any words could have. He was trusting her judgment, treating her as an equal. They moved into the rocks, creating a defensive position with overlapping fields of fire. The dogs settled into a loose perimeter. Sargent positioned himself closest to Kira, his body warm against her leg. She took first watch. The stars wheeled overhead. Somewhere out there, Vaughn Mercer was planning his next move. Somewhere out there, Marines were flying back to Fort Bliss, believing Kira Blackwood had deserted. And somewhere in a place beyond the stars, her father was watching. She hoped he was proud. The dust storm came without warning. One moment, the sky was clear, painted with the pale colors of dawn. The next, a wall of sand 1,000 feet high was rolling toward them like the end of the world. Kira had seen haboobs before. They were common in West Texas during monsoon season. But she'd never been caught in one on foot in the open desert with 7 dogs and 2 other people to protect. Move, Thatcher shouted. Find cover. Now! They ran. The wall of dust hit them like a solid thing, turning day into midnight in seconds. Visibility dropped to 0. The wind howled like a living creature tearing at clothes and equipment. Sand filled Kira's mouth, her nose, her eyes. She couldn't see, couldn't breathe. Could only stumble forward with her arms outstretched, hoping she didn't run into a rock or a cactus or a cliff edge. She heard barking. The dogs were scattering their training, breaking down in the face of nature's fury. She tried to call them back, but the wind ripped the words from her mouth before they could form. Sergeant! Where was Sergeant? She reached for him, found only air. Panic seized her chest. The dogs were her responsibility, her mission. If they were lost in this storm, a hand grabbed her arm. Thatcher, his face wrapped in a bandana, his eyes barely visible through the swirling sand. Find the dogs, Kira screamed. No! He pulled her down behind a boulder, forcing her into a crouch. Stay here. We can't leave them. They'll find us. Trust their training. Grandpa. Kira, his voice cut through the storm. If you go out there, you'll die. The dogs know how to survive. You stay here, that's an order. She wanted to argue, wanted to fight. But looking into Thatcher's eyes, 72 years old and absolutely certain she made a choice. She trusted him. They huddled behind the boulder for 15 minutes. 15 minutes that felt like hours. The storm raged around them, blotting out the world. Kira clutched her rifle and prayed to a god she wasn't sure existed. Then as suddenly as it had come, the storm passed. The air cleared. The wind died. Silence fell across the desert like a blanket. Kira stood on shaking legs and looked around. No dogs, no Ronan, just Thatcher and herself and an empty desert stretching in every direction. They're gone, she whispered. No. Thatcher pulled a whistle from his pocket, a dog whistle, the kind that only K9s could hear. Watch. He blew 3 short blasts. Nothing. He blew again. Still nothing. Kira's chest tightened. They'd lost 7 military working dogs in a dust storm. The mission was over before it had really begun. She'd failed. Failed her father, failed, the dogs failed movement. To the east, a shape emerging from the settling dust. Sergeant, the German shepherd, trotted toward them, his head high, his gait steady. Behind him came Atlas, then Chaos, then Bones. Shadow appeared from the south. Tank limped in from the west. And finally bringing up the rear Reaper. 7 dogs, all accounted for. Kira dropped to her knees as they surrounded her, their bodies pressing close, their tails wagging. She wrapped her arms around Sergeant and buried her face in his fur. Good boy, she whispered. Good boy. Ronan appeared 5 minutes later, covered in dust, but unhurt. I lost visual on everyone, he said. Followed the sound of the whistle. The dogs came back, Kira said, wonder in her voice. Of course they did. Thatcher was checking his rifle, clearing sand from the action. They're trained. Disciplined. They know their job. Kira looked at him. How did you know they'd come back? Because I trained Sergeant's grandfather and his great-grandfather. Dunham bloodline from Lackland Air Force Base. Best K9s in the world. They don't quit. They don't panic. They do their job. He met her eyes, just like Blackwood's. They walked for another 2 hours before the desert silence was broken by a sound that made Kira's blood run cold. Engines, multiple vehicles. Coming fast from the south. She dropped flat and brought up her rifle, scanning through the scope. Heat shimmer made the targets waver like mirages, but she could count them. 2 Ford F-250 trucks. Black, aftermarket lift kits, brush guards, and mounted in the truck beds, men with rifles. Contact, she said quietly. 2 vehicles. 6 hostiles visible. Range 800 yards. Thatcher moved beside her. He pulled out the M24, tried to sight through the scope. His hands were shaking. Not much, but enough. God damn it, he muttered. I can't hold steady. Kira understood. 72 years old. Decades of hard living. The body breaks down. The mind stays sharp, but the meat fails. This was the reality of age that nobody talked about. The slow betrayal of your own flesh. I've got this, she said. She settled into position behind her M40A6. The rifle was an extension of her body, familiar as her own heartbeat. She'd made shots like this 100 times on the range. A dozen times in combat deployments, but never with this much riding on it. The trucks were spreading out, trying to flank their position. Smart. Whoever was leading them had tactical training. Kira found the lead vehicle in her scope. Ranged it, 750 yards, wind from the west at 5 miles per hour. Temperature climbing toward 100 degrees. Mirage distorting the sight picture. She breathed out, let her heart rate slow. Found the zone where everything became simple. Target, distance, wind, trigger. The rifle kicked against her shoulder. 750 yards away, the driver's window of the lead truck exploded. The vehicle swerved hard left, fishtailed, rolled it 3 times before coming to rest on its side. Kira was already working the bolt, finding her second target. The passenger from the first truck had been thrown clear during the roll. He was standing now, raising his rifle, trying to locate where the shot had come from. She fired. He dropped. The second truck slammed on its brakes. 4 men bailed out, taking cover behind the vehicle. They knew they were being engaged by a precision shooter. They were staying low, making themselves hard targets. 2 down, Kira said. 4 hiding. They're disciplined. Can you hit them? Thatcher asked. Not without them exposing themselves. Then we wait. But the Mercer people weren't waiting. They were moving, using the truck as cover, advancing in tactical bounds. 50 yards, 40, 30, getting too close. One of them made a mistake. rose up to scan with binoculars. Kira put a round through his chest at 400 yards. The man dropped like a puppet with cut strings. The others went flat, stayed down. Then Ronan's voice urgent. Ma'am, 3 o'clock. Kira swung her rifle. 3 more men were flanking from the east using a dry wash for cover. They'd been there the whole time waiting for her to fixate on the trucks. Classic L-shaped ambush. We're surrounded, Ronan said quietly. Thatcher looked at Kira. Your call, Captain. And there it was, the moment every leader faces, multiple threats, limited resources, seconds to decide. Kira's mind raced through the tactical situation, 7 hostiles, 3 directions. She and Thatcher had precision weapons, but they were outnumbered. Ronan had a carbine but limited combat experience. The dogs were trained to attack, but sending them against armed men was suicide. She needed to change the geometry. Ronan, she said quietly, take the dogs and fall back to that rock formation 100 yards north. Set up a defensive position. Stay hidden. What about you? We're going to convince them to leave. She pulled one of the grenades from her pack. Thatcher saw it and smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a man who'd survived 3 wars by being meaner than the other guy. Like the old days, he said. Kira judged the distance to the second truck. 65 yards. Close enough. She pulled the pin, counted 3 seconds. Through. The grenade arced through the air, a small, dark sphere against the blue sky. It hit the ground beside the truck and detonated with a sound like the world cracking open. The blast was enormous. The truck's fuel tank went up in a secondary explosion, sending a fireball 50 feet into the air. 2 of the men behind it were thrown like ragdolls. She saw one land 20 feet away, his body bent at angles that weren't compatible with life. The 3 flankers to the east broke cover running. Kira dropped one at 200 yards. Thatcher fired the M24, his hands steadier now, with adrenaline overriding his age. The bullet missed but came close enough to send the others diving for cover. Go! Kira shouted. She and Thatcher ran, reached Ronan and the dogs. Together they fell back, using terrain and speed to break contact. Behind them, the burning truck sent a column of black smoke into the sky like a funeral pyre. They didn't stop for half a mile. When they finally halted, gasping for breath, Kira did a head count. 7 dogs. Ronan, Thatcher, everyone accounted for. 3 dead for sure, Thatcher said, looking back at the smoke. Maybe 4. The rest will report our position. Mercer will know exactly where we are, Kira said. He knew already. Ronan was pale but steady. His hands weren't shaking. Good. They were waiting for us, like they knew our route. Kira pulled out her tactical map, studied the terrain. We need to change direction. Add distance, but avoid the likely ambush points. How much distance? Thatcher asked. She traced a line with her finger. 20 miles. Takes us from 65 total to 85. That's 2 more days. That's staying alive. Thatcher looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. You're in command, Captain. I trust your judgment. Something shifted in Kira's chest. Her grandfather, the man who'd survived 3 wars and 50 years of law enforcement, was deferring to her, trusting her to lead. She was 28 years old, and she was in command. We move in 30 minutes, she said. Rest the dogs, check equipment, redistribute ammunition. Be ready for contact. They moved northeast, following a new route that took them through rougher terrain. Dry washes and rocky hills that provided cover but slowed their pace. The sun hammered down without mercy. Water became precious. Every swallow measured. Every step calculated. 4 hours into the new route, they heard it. A high-pitched whine, growing louder. Kira looked up and saw death coming. The drone was small, consumer-grade, maybe 2 feet across. The kind you could buy online for a few $100s. But strapped to its underside was something that definitely wasn't consumer-grade. C4 explosive. Maybe half a pound. Enough to kill everyone in a 20-foot radius. Scatter! Kira screamed. The dogs bolted in 7 different directions, their training overriding their pack instincts. Run from explosions. Ronan dove left, Thatcher right. Kira dropped to one knee and brought up her rifle. The drone was moving fast, maybe 40 miles per hour, weaving and jinking to avoid being shot down. Whoever was piloting it knew exactly what they were doing. Kira led the target, breathed out, fired. The drone exploded in midair. The C4 detonated with a sharp crack that echoed off the rocks. Fragments rained down smoking. Second drone, Ronan shouted, coming from the west. Kira swung her rifle. There, another one. Same profile, same explosive payload, different approach angle. She fired. Missed. The drone was closer now, diving toward them like a predatory bird. She could see the red light of its camera tracking. It was targeting one of the dogs. Tank. The big Malinois was running but not fast enough. The drone was closing, 30 yards. 20. Kira fired again. Hit the drone's motor but not the explosive. It wobbled, dropped altitude, but kept coming on momentum alone. 10 yards. 5. The explosion caught Tank's hindquarters. The dog yelped, went down hard, rolled twice. When he stopped moving, his left rear leg was twisted at an impossible angle. Kira ran to him. The dog was conscious, panting hard, his eyes wide with pain and confusion. She did a quick assessment. Broken femur, shrapnel wounds in the muscle, alive but severely compromised. He couldn't walk. Not on 3 legs carrying injuries like that. Not 65 miles through hostile territory. Ronan reached them, his face stricken. Is he alive, but he can't continue, not like this. The words hung in the desert air like a death sentence. Kira looked at Tank. The dog's eyes met hers, trusting, waiting for her to fix this, waiting for her to save him. She thought about her father, about 8 children and a helicopter that couldn't carry them all, about the choice between saving everyone and saving anyone, about the difference between a hero and a survivor. Ronan, she said quietly, you're staying here with Tank. What? Marines are coming. Force recon maybe 12 hours out. You stay here. Keep Tank stable. Keep him alive. When they arrive, you tell them where we went. Captain, I can't. That's an order, specialist. Ronan's face was white. You're going on alone with 6 dogs against Mercer's people. Not alone with my grandfather, and yes, with 6 Dussault. That's, he stopped himself. That's the mission, Kira finished. Someone has to stay with Tank. That's you. Someone has to finish this. That's us. She pulled medical supplies from her pack. Bandages, morphine, water. Everything Ronan would need to keep Tank alive for half a day. Thatcher came over. He didn't say anything. Just watched as Kira worked his weathered face unreadable. When she was done, she looked at Ronan. The young man was crying. Not from fear. From the realization that he was being left behind. That he wouldn't get to finish what he'd started. You saved my father's life, Ronan said, his voice breaking. Your father, I mean. And now I can't help save these dogs. You're saving Tank, Kira said. That's not nothing. That's everything to him. She pulled her radio from her pack and handed it over. Channel 7, monitor only. When the Marines come, tell them everything. Tell them we went north to the old airfield. Tell them, she paused. Tell them Kira Blackwood was following her father's orders. What if Mercer's people find me first? Kira pulled her secondary pistol, a compact Glock 19, and handed it over with 2 spare magazines. Then you make them regret it. You're a Marine, Ronan. Act like one. They left Ronan and Tank in a protected depression between 2 large boulders. Natural cover on 3 sides. Clear sight lines, defensible. The young man sat with his back against the stone, the injured dog's head in his lap, the pistol within reach. As they walked away, Kira heard him singing softly, a lullaby. Probably something his father had sung to him as a child who'd been saved by Declan Blackwood 28 years ago. She didn't look back. Looking back was how you lost your nerve. The sun was setting when Thatcher called a halt. They'd covered another 15 miles. 43 to go. 6 dogs remained Sergeant Atlas, Chaos, Bones, Shadow, and Reaper. You made the right call, Thatcher said, leaving Ronan with Tank. Did I? Your father tried to save everyone. It killed him. You chose to save who you could save. That's wisdom. Kira looked at her grandfather. His face was weathered and worn, carved by decades of wind and sun and hard choices. Did you ever have to leave someone behind, she asked. Once. Afghanistan 2003. We had a man down in a firefight. Couldn't get to him without losing the whole team. Had to fall back. And what happened to him? Taliban got him. Found his body 3 days later. Do you regret it? Thatcher was quiet for a long time. Then every single day. But I'd make the same choice again. Because the alternative was losing 8 people instead of 1. He looked at her. Command means carrying the weight of choices that have no good answer. Your father never learned that lesson. He thought he could save everyone. You're learning it now. Sometimes the right choice is the one that lets the most people live. They made camp in the ruins of an old line shack. Just 3 walls and a memory of a roof, but it was more shelter than they'd had in 2 days. The dogs collapsed immediately, exhausted. Kira rationed out water and food, calculating how long their supplies would last. Not long enough. Thatcher took first watch. Kira tried to sleep but couldn't. Her mind kept circling back to Tank and Ronan alone in the desert. To the 6 dogs still with her. To the 43 miles that lay ahead. To her father who'd tried to save 8 children and died trying. She pulled out his letter, read it again by red-filtered flashlight. Don't leave them behind. She hadn't. Tank was with Ronan. The other 6 were here. Everyone was accounted for. But she'd learned something her father never had the chance to learn. Sometimes you can't save everyone. Sometimes the mission requires sacrifice. Sometimes you have to choose between dead heroes and live warriors. She folded the letter and looked at the 6 sleeping dogs. I'll get you home, she whispered. I promise. Sergeant's ear twitched, his eyes open. He looked at her with something that might have been understanding. Then he laid his head back down and slept. Kira closed her eyes. Tomorrow they would walk another 20 miles. Tomorrow Mercer's people would find them again. Tomorrow there would be more choices, more sacrifices, more chances to fail. But tonight, for a few hours, everyone was alive. That would have to be enough. The abandoned Border Patrol outpost rose from the desert floor like a monument to forgotten wars. 3 concrete bunkers arranged in a triangle, their walls thick enough to stop rifle fire. Chain link fence sagging in places, torn completely away in others. A flagpole with no flag, just frayed rope clicking against aluminum in the wind. Kira Blackwood studied it through her rifle scope from 800 yards out, 43 miles behind them, 22 ahead to the old DEA airfield where extraction was supposed to happen. Supposed to. What do you think? Thatcher asked. He was lying beside her in the shade of a rock outcropping, the M24 rifle across his lap. 3 days in the desert had aged him. His face was sunburned despite the bandana. His hands shook when they weren't holding something. Defensible, Kira said. 3 bunkers form a triangle, overlapping coverage, good fields of fire. I helped design it back in '03. Border Patrol wanted something that could hold against a serious assault. He spat dust. Before everything got complicated, before budgets and politics turned border security into a joke. Kira swept her scope across the outpost again. 6 dogs lay in the shade beside them, panting in the afternoon heat. Sergeant Atlas, Chaos, Bones, Shadow, and Reaper. 43 miles, and they were all still moving, still alive. Her radio crackled. Static, then a voice. Ronan. Tango 6, this is Victor 2. You copy? Kira keyed the handset. Copy Victor 2. Status. Tank is stable. Legs splinted. Morphine is holding. We're good here. A pause. Ma'am, I've got eyes on activity. Multiple vehicles. 2 helicopters just set down 3 clicks east of your last known position. Bell 407 civilian models, but definitely not civilian operators. Kira's jaw tightened. How many personnel? I count 12, maybe more. They're unloading equipment. Looks like they're establishing a forward operating base. And ma'am, Ronan's voice was tense. One of them is setting up what looks like a satellite communications rig. They're not just hunting you, they're coordinating something bigger. Thatcher was already marking positions on the map. They're cutting us off, he said, getting between us and the airfield. Classic hammer and anvil. They'll push us toward the outpost and crush us there. Recommendations, Victor 2, Kira asked. Ma'am, you need to find cover and dig in. Marines are inbound, but they're still 8 hours out minimum. Weather's slowing them down. You're on your own until then. 8 hours. Kira looked at the outpost, at the 6 dogs, at her grandfather whose hands wouldn't stop shaking. 8 hours against 12 men with helicopters and unlimited ammunition. The math was not in their favor. Understood, Victor 2. We're going to ground at the old outpost. Rally Point Zulu. Monitor Channel 7 for updates. Roger that, ma'am. Ronan's voice cracked slightly. I should be there with you. You're exactly where you need to be, specialist. Keep Tank alive. That's your mission. We'll handle ours. She switched off the radio before he could respond. Thatcher was studying the outpost through binoculars. We need to get in there and fortify before they figure out where we are. They already know where we are, Kira said. They've probably been tracking us since we left Outpost Raven. Then we need to make them pay in blood for coming after us. They move fast. Kira led with Sergeant at her side. The other 5 dogs spread out in formation, their tactical training evident in every movement. Thatcher brought up the rear, the M24 held ready, despite his shaking hands. The outpost's main bunker was bigger than it had looked from a distance. 2 rooms, concrete walls, 18 inches thick. Gun ports facing northeast and south. A back exit that led to the second bunker 30 yards away. Someone had designed this place to hold. Kira did a quick tactical assessment. This is the command post. We set up here. Use the gun ports for overlapping fire. The other 2 bunkers give us fallback positions if we're pushed. We won't be pushed, Thatcher said. He was already moving to the eastern gun port, setting up the M24 on a makeshift rest built from rubble and sandbags someone had left behind years ago. Kira positioned the dogs in the interior of the bunker. Blimmaby, she said in German. Stay. 6 pairs of eyes watched her, waiting. She pulled out her last 2 grenades and positioned them at strategic points near the entrances. Tripwires made from paracord. If someone came through those doors without knowing the pattern, they'd have a very bad day. The radio crackled again. Not Ronan this time. A different voice. Smooth, cultured, educated. Kira Blackwood. The voice was almost pleasant. I know you can hear me. This is Vaughn Mercer. I believe we have some things to discuss. Kira and Thatcher exchanged glances. She keyed the handset. I'm listening? Good. I appreciate a professional dialogue. Here's my situation. I have 12 men. 2 helicopters. Enough ammunition to level that outpost you're hiding in, and all the time in the world. Get to the point. The point, Captain, is that I don't want those dogs. I don't even particularly want you, though killing you would be as satisfying. What I want is standing right next to you. Kira looked at Thatcher. Her grandfather's face had gone still. Thatcher Dunham, Mercer continued, the man who killed my father 28 years ago. The man who's lived a free life while my father rotted in the ground. The man who took everything from me. Your father was a criminal, Kira said. He kidnapped children. He sold weapons to people who kill Americans. He got exactly what he deserved. My father was providing a service in a market that exists because of American hypocrisy. Mercer's voice was cold now. Your grandfather was a government thug with a badge and a gun who executed him without trial. He was holding a gun to a child's head. So you've been told. Were you there, Captain? Did you see it with your own eyes? Silence filled the bunker. That's what I thought, Mercer said. You're operating on faith. Faith in a system that lies. Faith in a man who killed my father and called it justice. What do you want? Kira asked. A trade. Thatcher Dunham walks out, unarmed. He surrenders to me, and in exchange, you and those 6 dogs walk away. You get safe passage to the airfield. You get to go home. You get to live. Silence. Kira was already shaking her head, but Thatcher had stood up. He was looking at her with an expression she couldn't read. No, Kira said. Absolutely not. It's a reasonable offer, Thatcher said quietly. It's murder. He'll kill you. Probably, but you'll live. The dogs will live. 6 lives for 1. The math works. Grandpa, listen to me, so? Thatcher's voice was sharp now. Command voice. I'm 72 years old. I've got maybe 10 good years left, if I'm lucky, 5 if I'm realistic. My hands shake. My back hurts. I can't shoot straight anymore. But you're 28. You've got your whole life ahead of you. This isn't about age. No, it's about debt. Thatcher moved closer. I've carried a debt for 28 years, your father's death. I've tried to pay it down by living right, by being there for you when I could, but I've never been able to square the books. This is my chance. By dying, by choosing, the way your father chose. Kira felt something break inside her. You think dying settles the debt. You think that's what Dad would want. I think your father would want you to live. Then live. Kira's voice was rising now. You want to honor his memory, then stay alive. Be there when I have kids. Tell them about their grandfather. Pass on his legacy. Don't you dare take the easy way out and call it noble. Thatcher stared at her. You know what dying is, Kira continued. Dying is easy. It's over in a second, and then you don't have to carry anything anymore. Living with what happened, that's hard. That's real courage. Her voice was shaking now. My father died so 8 children could live. You don't honor that by dying too. You honor it by living. By making sure those 8 lives he saved meant something. By being here. By staying. The radio crackled. Mercer's voice impatient now. I'm waiting for an answer, Captain Blackwood. Does Thatcher Dunham have the courage to face me? Or does he hide behind his granddaughter like he hid while your father died? Kira took the radio, keyed it. You want to talk about courage? Then talk to me. I'm coming out. Kira, no. Thatcher grabbed her arm. She pulled away. You said I'm in command. That means I make the calls. She began stripping off her tactical vest. Her rifle, everything except her sidearm and knife. This is insane. This is leadership. She looked at him. You stay here. You keep the dogs safe. And when the Marines arrive, you tell them what happened. You tell them a Blackwood finished what a Blackwood started. She walked toward the bunker entrance. Kira, Thatcher's voice stopped her. I need to tell you something. Something I should have said 28 years ago. What? He took a breath, and then for the first time he told her the whole truth. When we were falling, he said quietly, when I knew we were going to crash, your father had maybe 3 seconds to make a choice. He could try to land the helicopter as evenly as possible. Spread the impact. Maybe everyone survives, maybe nobody does. Or, Thatcher's voice broke. Or he could turn the helicopter, take the full impact on the pilot's side, guarantee his own death, but give the passenger side where I was sitting with the kids a chance. Kira felt the world stop. He turned the helicopter, Thatcher whispered. At the last second, I saw him do it. He looked at me and he smiled. Actually smiled, like he was saying, this is okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. Tears were running down the old man's face now. Your father chose to die so I could live. And for 28 years, I've been asking myself why. Why was my life worth more than his? And you know what I finally realized? What? It wasn't. My life wasn't worth more. But your father didn't make that choice because of worth. He made it because of who he was. A man who saved people, even people who didn't deserve it. Even me. Thatcher's hands were shaking worse now. I was afraid in that helicopter, Kira. Afraid to jump when he told me to. Afraid to trust that he could save us. I held on because I wanted to live. And because I held on, he died. That's the truth. That's what I've been carrying. Where Kira stood there, her father's letter over her heart, and understood. So now you want to die to make up for it, she said quietly. I want to do what's right. No, she walked back to him, took his shaking hands in hers. Dying isn't what's right. Dad chose to save you for a reason. He chose to save 8 kids for a reason. Those choices created Ronan, created his father, created a whole chain of lives that wouldn't exist if Dad had chosen differently. She squeezed his hands. You don't honor his choice by dying. You honor it by living well, by being the man he thought was worth saving. The radio crackled again. Mercer, time's up, Captain. Kira let go of Thatcher's hands, picked up her sidearm, checked the magazine. I'm going out there, she said, not to trade my life for yours, but to buy time. 8 hours until the Marines arrive. I just need to keep Mercer talking for 8 hours. And if he won't talk, then I'll make him listen. She stepped out into the afternoon sun. Heat shimmered across the wasteland. 200 yards to the north, Vaughn Mercer stood beside a black Suburban. 12 men in tactical gear spread out around him, weapons ready. 2 Bell 407 helicopters sat on the hardpan behind them, their rotors still. Kira walked toward him, slowly, hands visible. 6 dogs walked with her, forming a protective diamond around her body. She hadn't called them, hadn't given the command, they'd simply followed. Because that's what dogs did. They followed their people into hell if that's where their people went. Captain Blackwood. Mercer was tall, 6'2", maybe 6'3", broad shoulders, dark hair graying at the temples. He wore expensive tactical gear, the kind bought from specialty retailers. I'm impressed. I expected Thatcher to make the sacrifice play. My grandfather has spent 28 years sacrificing, Kira said. It's someone else's turn. Noble, but unnecessary. Mercer pulled his sidearm. A Sig Sauer P226. Good weapon. Reliable. I don't want you. I want the man who killed my father. You can't have him. Then you all die. The gun came up, aimed at her chest. Starting with you. Kira didn't flinch. She met his eyes. You know what's interesting about revenge? What? It doesn't actually make you feel better. Ask anyone who's gotten it. They'll tell you. The thing you thought would fill the hole just makes it bigger. Spoken like somebody who's never lost a father. I lost mine when I was 6 months old. Never knew him. Never heard his voice. Never got to call him Dad. She took a step closer. But you know what? I still carry him with me. Every day. His choices, his legacy, the lives he saved. How touching. Your father made choices too. He kidnapped children. He sold weapons. People died because of him. And my grandfather stopped him. That wasn't murder. That was justice. Mercer's jaw tightened. Justice would have been a trial, a court. Justice would have been my father getting to defend himself. Instead, Thatcher Dunham executed him in a warehouse and called it law enforcement. Your father was holding a gun to a child's head. What was my grandfather supposed to do, fill out paperwork while that child died? You weren't there. You don't know what happened. No, but my grandfather was there, and he's lived with that choice every single day for 28 years. That's his punishment, living with it. Can you say the same? Mercer's finger rested on the trigger. The moment stretched like wire pulling taut. Then the sound of rotors, not helicopters. Ospreys. Four V-22 Ospreys came in low from the south, their massive rotors churning the air. They settled into a formation around the outpost, creating a ring of overwhelming firepower. Marines fast roped down, 28 of them, full combat gear, weapons ready, moving with the precision that came from endless training and actual combat. Mercer's men knew when they were outmatched. Weapons lowered, hands went up. Kira allowed herself to breathe. A Marine lieutenant approached, young maybe 30, but with the hard eyes of someone who'd seen combat and learned from it. Captain Blackwood, Lieutenant Marcus Hayes, 2nd Force Recon. General Webb sends his regards. You're early, Lieutenant. We had help. He gestured toward one of the Ospreys. The ramp lowered. Two figures emerged. Ronan Cade supporting a limping tank. The dog's rear leg was splinted and bandaged, but his tail was wagging. Behind them, a Marine carrying medical gear. He radioed us 6 hours ago, Hayes explained. Gave us your exact position and tactical situation. We pushed the timeline called in favors, flew through weather we shouldn't have flown through, but we made it. Kira dropped to one knee as Tank limped toward her. The dog pressed his head against her chest, whining softly. She wrapped her arms around him. 7 dogs, all alive, all accounted for. What about him? Hayes was looking at Mercer. Kira stood, walked over to where Mercer stood now in zip-tie restraints. The man who'd hunted them across 65 miles of desert. The man who'd wanted revenge for a death that happened 28 years ago. She looked into his eyes and saw something she recognized. Pain, anger, loss. The same thing she'd felt her whole life growing up without a father. My grandfather killed your father, she said quietly, but he did it to save 80 children. One of those children grew up and had a son named Ronan, who helped save my life today, who kept a dog alive when he could have run. She paused. That's the difference between us. You chose hate. He chose honor. Your father's death created life. What will your choices create? Mercer said nothing, just looked at her with eyes that held too much anger to ever be emptied. But Kira thought she saw something else there too, just for a moment, something that might have been understanding. Marines led Mercer away. His men followed a line of defeated soldiers trudging toward the Ospreys that would take them to federal custody and long prison sentences. Thatcher emerged from the bunker, walked slowly toward them, the M24 rifle over his shoulder. He stopped in front of the Marines holding Mercer. I killed your father, he said to Mercer. I'd do it again, because he was holding a gun to a child's head and I had a choice to make. I chose the child. He paused. I'm sorry you lost your father, but I'm not sorry I pulled the trigger. You're a murderer, Mercer said. Maybe, but I'm a murderer who saved 8 lives. What are you? No answer. Thatcher turned away. Walked to where Kira stood with the 7 dogs around her. You did good, he said. Your father would be proud. We did good, Kira corrected. All of us. They stood together watching the sun set over the desert. 6 dogs lying around them, exhausted but alive. Tank curled up at Kira's feet, his injured legs stretched out carefully. Hayes approached. Captain, we need to get you back to base. Debrief, medical checks, the works. What about the dogs? They're coming with us, all 7. He smiled. Orders from the top. General Webb was very specific. No dog gets left behind. 8 weeks later. Kira stood in formation at Fort Bliss, Texas. The parade ground was packed. Marines in dress blues, Border Patrol in formal greens, media cameras rolling, though Kira had insisted on no interviews. General Marcus Webb, 78 years old and still ramrod straight, stepped forward with a small velvet box. Captain Kira Blackwood, he said, his voice carrying across the formation, for extraordinary heroism in the face of overwhelming odds, for refusing to abandon military assets under your command, for demonstrating the highest traditions of the United States Marine Corps. He opened the box. Inside, gleaming gold and blue, was the Navy Cross. You're being awarded the Navy Cross for valor. He pinned it to her uniform. The weight was significant, physical and otherwise. The formation applauded. Kira stood at attention, feeling the metal against her chest. Right next to her father's dog tags. Webb leaned in close. Your father was my friend, he said quietly. He died doing the right thing. You lived doing the right thing. That's progress. After the ceremony, Kira found Ronan in the crowd. All 7 dogs were there wearing honorary service ribbons around their necks. Tank walked with a slight limp, but the veterinarian said he'd made a full recovery. Good news, Ronan said, grinning. They changed the policy. What policy? He handed her a printed document. Official Department of Defense letterhead. She scanned it quickly. K9 Protection of 2024. Effective immediately, all military working dogs were classified as personnel, not equipment. Mandatory evacuation with their units. No exceptions. Because of you, Ronan said. Because you proved they were worth saving. Kira folded the document carefully. We proved it. All of us. 6 months after that. The television in Thatcher's ranch house in New Mexico played the evening news. Kira sat on the couch, Sergeant's head in her lap. The old German shepherd was officially retired now, living with Thatcher. The other 6 dogs had been adopted through veterans programs, each one going to a home that would honor their service. The news anchor was reporting on a new foundation. In a surprising move, convicted arms dealer Vaughn Mercer has donated his entire personal estate to establish the Mercer Blackwood Foundation for Border Children. The foundation will provide educational scholarships and support services for children affected by border violence. The camera showed a new building in El Paso, children playing in a courtyard. 8 of them, the same number Declan Blackwood had saved in 1996. In a written statement from federal prison, Mercer said, "My father taught me to see enemies. Kira Blackwood taught me to see people. I can't undo the past, but I can choose what future my choices create." Thatcher turned off the television. "The cycle is broken," he said quietly. Kira nodded. "Took 28 years, but yeah, it's broken." That evening, she drove to the cemetery in El Paso. Thatcher rode beside her in the passenger seat. Sergeant sat in the back, his gray muzzle resting on the center console. Declan Blackwood's grave was simple. White marble headstone, his name, his rank, his dates, and below that a single line someone had added recently. He died saving lives. Kira knelt beside the grave, placed the Navy Cross on the stone, not to give it away, but to share it. "Hey, Dad," she said quietly. "Mission complete. All 7 dogs made it home. Just like you asked." Thatcher knelt beside her, his old bones creaking, but making it down. He placed the M24 rifle gently against the headstone. "I'm giving this back to you, Declan," he said. His voice was rough. "Been carrying it for 28 years. Figure it's time to let it rest." They stayed there as the sun set, an old man and a young woman separated by 44 years and united by a single moment of choice made in a falling helicopter. Finally, Kira spoke. "I need to tell you something, Grandpa. Something I realized out there in the desert." "What?" "You asked why Dad chose to save you, why he turned that helicopter, why your life was worth his death." "I'm still asking." Kira touched the headstone. "It wasn't about worth, it was about what he believed you'd do with the life he gave you. He believed you'd use it well, that you'd honor it by living it right." She looked at Thatcher. "You did. You raised me. You taught me. You helped me save 7 dogs and break a cycle of revenge that could have gone on for another generation. That's what he saved you for. That's why it mattered." Thatcher's eyes were wet. "I wish I could have told him thank you. You just did. Every day you lived well was thank you. Every choice you made to honor his sacrifice was thank you." They stood together, walked back to the truck. Sergeant followed his pause, silent on the grass between the graves. At the truck, Kira paused, looked back at her father's headstone. The Navy Cross gleamed in the fading light. The rifle rested against the marble, and above it all, carved in stone, the truth. He died saving lives. "No," Kira said softly. "He lived saving lives, and he taught his daughter to do the same." She drove away from the cemetery as the first stars appeared. Thatcher dozed in the passenger seat. Sergeant's breathing was slow and steady in the back. The radio played quietly. Country music. Something about going home. Kira thought about the 7 dogs, about Tank's recovered leg, and how he'd been adopted by a Marine veteran with PTSD who needed a companion. About Ronan, who'd been promoted and was now running the K9 training program at Lackland. About Vaughn Mercer, sitting in a federal prison cell, trying to build something good from the ruins of his hate. About Thatcher, who'd finally put down the weight he'd carried for 28 years. And about her father, who'd made a choice in the last 3 seconds of his life. A choice that had echoed across decades and saved lives he'd never know about. The highway stretched ahead, empty and dark, but leading home. Kira Blackwood drove through the night. 7 debts paid, 7 dogs saved, 7 lives that proved one simple truth. You don't measure a life by how long it lasts. You measure it by what you leave behind. Her father had left her, and through her he'd saved 7 dogs. Changed a policy that would protect thousands more. Proven that loyalty was worth more than regulations. Broken a cycle of revenge before it could destroy another generation. Not bad for a man who'd been dead for 28 years. Kira smiled. We did it, Dad, she whispered. We brought them all home. The stars wheeled overhead, cold and bright and eternal. The desert stretched away into darkness. And somewhere in a place beyond the stars, a pilot who died 28 years ago watched his daughter drive into the night and was proud. The story was over. The legacy was just beginning.